Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Sarnia Cinema podcast, which is taken over from 24 Lives per Second podcast, because I just thought I'd better tell you, because so many people will listen to that one, they'll be all confused. Anyway, this is episode 1 of the Sarnia Cinema podcast, a fortnightly half-hour delve into the films being shown in Guernsey and in your home, and some film news and bits and pieces if we've got time. Anyway, we've got half an hour and we've got loads of films to get through, so first of all, let's start with Oblivion. Russ, you've seen Oblivion. What's it about?
Oh, Oblivion's about loads of things. If you've been watching sci-fi, for the last kind of 50 years, you will know what Oblivion's about. Oblivion is about kind of a scorched Earth kind of scenario. Earth has been in a war with some aliens, and the big line in the film is, although we won the war, we lost Earth, basically. And so kind of everyone's in the middle of kind of moving off Earth, and all who's left are Tom Cruise and his girlfriend, I suppose. She is his girlfriend at the time when we meet them, and they are kind of drone repair, and they're kind of going around repairing these drones that are looking after the hydro energy kind of plants that are sucking all the energy out of Earth's oceans in order to take it with them to Titan. I think it's Titan, which is one of Saturn's moons, which is the new base where everyone's going to live. Hilarity ensues. In terms of 30 seconds, I can't really go further into that, but kind of that's how it works. Some things happen, and then some people do some stuff. As I said at the beginning, it is one of the most derivative sci-fi films ever made. I think it touches base with everything, kind of from 2001, going through Independence Day, going right up to something like Moon that came out a few years ago, and it kind of takes.
And Wall-E.
Huh?
Wall-E.
Yeah, definitely.
He is Wall-E at the start.
Exactly. He is. And so in that sense, it's a bit of a strange film, because there is the only originality I saw in there was really from the director Joseph Kosinski in terms of his design. I think, and that's where he brought.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Where you kind of look at his Tron sequel that he made a few years ago, that was very empty. In the same way, a very empty film and not much going on, but looked very beautiful and quite interesting to kind of sit and watch. And it's the same here. The spaceships, where they live, the design of the costume, everything is really nice, and it was that's a real kind of plus point to it. It looked different. One of the few things it did differently was in its look and kind of how it did that. I think I liked it more than I thought I would, because it surprised me more than anything else. I was going in there thinking it was going to be Tom Cruise in kind of Mission Impossible mode, fighting off aliens and doing his thing in space and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't happen like that at all. It actually takes time to kind of flesh out the characters and kind of see where they're going and what's happening. And although that's probably its biggest plus point, at the same time it's also, it drags. The film does drag at kind of just over 2 hours. It's not that long, but it does kind of drag a bit in the middle, and you think if they'd shaved 20 minutes off this, it would have been quite an interesting, tight little film. So apart from its kind of lack of originality, it is that pacing that kind of was a big problem for me, and that's where it was. But I still I did enjoy it, and I think, like I say, it was an interesting film, if not a particularly, inspiring one to kind of go and watch. I wouldn't place it in the same category as something like Moon, which was really interesting and and had a lot of kind of things going on under the surface about it. You can't talk too much about it because you'll give things away for both of them. But yeah, I wouldn't watch it again. But I sat in the cinema and enjoyed watching it for 2 hours, just about.
See, it's the type of film where in about 2 or 3 years' time, I'll think, I'm sure I should have liked that film a bit more than I did, and I'll probably go back and watch it, because it's probably the most interesting unoriginal film I've seen in quite some time, because it's full of these quite big ideas from a very mainstream Hollywood film. But where it sort of goes wrong a bit is we had Looper, and you've already mentioned Moon, and both of those films really do the same thing that Oblivion did, in that Looper, you can run through 12 Monkeys, Terminator. There's about 15 different films running through that one. And to the point where you could say it's a rip-off. But what Moon and Looper do is they're very solid genre films. In fact, they take the ideas and they use them, as a genre film should, and they adapt them a bit. They put an extra little, a bit more, they push the genre a bit. Whereas what Oblivion does, it takes those genre ideas and it makes a Tom Cruise action movie
just
out
uses
of it.
Them,
So sort of 45 minutes in, it gets a bit less interesting. Then as it gets towards the end, it gets a bit less interesting. Then it gets very interesting again, right at the end. But they do this thing because it's a big blockbuster film, and because they, I suppose international sales, they over-explain everything that's going on. There's a lot of business with these aliens on the planet, and it's all so over-explained.
It's very simple, isn't it?
And there are about three sort of characters more than you need with speaking parts within sort of those scenes, and there's all sorts of business going on where you're kind of thinking, I wish this film was an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I wish it was about the idea it started with, but you kind of watching, you think it looks fantastic. I mean, part of the Tom Cruise's job in the film is that he, as you said, he's a technician. He repairs these great big towering things that are sucking the water off Earth to power Titan or something or other. And when you look at them, they've got this odd look. It looks like an amazing matte painting. In fact, they don't look real. They look like the cover of a sci-fi book, and but the whole film's got that look, so it works sort of as a whole. And I think they've used sort of CGI in a very clever way. And there are moments where you sit there and go, "Oh, this is going to get interesting."
Yeah.
But then it just doesn't. But having said that, I would say, go and watch it. I'd recommend go and watch it at the cinema, because chances are, people are going to enjoy it. If you're a bit of a nerd, you will sit there just ticking off the kind of references. But then, in fairness, you do that most times.
Did. I thought Andrea Riseborough was excellent. I thought she was kind of the pick of the bunch.
Now, that was a really odd character.
Yeah, really odd, but she plays it really well, and it's a really interesting development. And it was one of the through lines that really did pull you through it. And one of the surprises and excitement kind of thing led into it was her character. I thought that was very good, and I thought she stood out above everyone else in it.
See, a more interesting hour and a half film would have been her character.
Yeah.
With him going off and doing the Tom Cruise bits.
But he's Tom Cruise.
I mean, we were chatting about Tom Cruise just before we started recording, and he's someone I sort of fall in and out of love with, because he kind of goes through these annoying patches. But I mean, Russ, you were saying he makes so
everything.
many different films.
He makes everything from from comedy to drama to thriller to straight out action to action comedy. He's been in Magnolia. He's been in some massive films. Some really interesting indie stuff as well. So I think people write him off very, very quickly. And we Collateral is one of the ones that always sticks in my mind, where he played against type and was fantastic. Amazing in it. This cool, calm, old killer. Really great. I don't like writing him off, and that's why I'll always go and see his stuff. I've probably seen nearly everything he's ever done. But I wouldn't say he's my favourite actor of all time.
Shut as well.
But
Sorry,
I think he's great, and long may he continue to do stuff, because he's making films, and it's just,
he's putting money into it.
Well,
he's putting money into interesting stuff.
Yeah,
I think.
for sure.
But anyway, I'd say go and watch Oblivion. I think that's a definite recommendation. Okay, so moving on quite quickly into another mildly derivative film. Olympus Has Fallen is being shown at the Mallard at the moment. I went to see this one. Okay, the IMDb description is: disgraced former presidential guard Mike Banning finds himself trapped inside the White House in the wake of a terrorist attack, etc. I mean, it's Die Hard, it's Die Hard 2, it's Under Siege, it's all that stuff.
Yeah, I read that to my wife, and we didn't go and see it. We didn't go.
And what I got to say, it's quite a good film. It's quite enjoyable. It's Anton Fuqua, which I think is the right pronunciation, who directed and wrote Training Day, and he's involved in that whole kind of LA cops sort of scene. So it's quite, for a film like this, it's quite a muscular film, and I was expecting a 12A, and it turned out to be a 15.
You were happy then?
And the difference is, between this and some piece of rubbish like Die Hard, is because it's a 15, I mean, there is blood everywhere. I mean, in the first sort of quarter of an hour, there's a giant plane flying around Washington, chain gunning people in the streets. And I've never seen so many people get stabbed or shot in the face at such point blank range. And the script is terrible. One of his lines, Bruce Willis back in the day, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker, Arnie, stick around, all that stuff, all
I'll be back.
delivered with panache and had a bit of a nod and a wink. This was, I think the line was, let's play a game of fuck off. Why don't you go first? I was like, wow! Delivered by Gerard Butler doing his Gerard Buttles and whatnot.
That's good.
Aaron Eckhart's in there playing the president. Morgan Freeman's in there playing a slightly different role to what you expect, because Morgan Freeman's one of those guys that when he turns up, you go, especially in a particular type of film, you think, oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
I see where this is
It's
going.
Ed Harris walks in after 40 minutes sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But, it might go slightly differently to that one. I think what saved this film is that it's very brutal. It really keeps going. It's got this odd kind of thing where there's no real sort of through line to it. So this quarter of an hour is do this mission.
Like problem
this
solving.
You know, it sort of feels like a 90s computer game in that you've got 5 or 6 levels and he's got to get through. And you can just imagine it sort of a top-down, sort of very 90s thing. But like I say, I mean, there's one area where it sort of falls down slightly, and there's a very interesting thing going on with Aaron Eckhart's president and nuclear codes and so on. And the whole twist of why he's disgraced was actually quite an interesting...
Okay.
It's actually quite an interesting reason in this one. I'd thoroughly recommend this.
I'm sold.
I mean, it's a shit film, but it's a really good shit film.
Yeah, that sounds
It's not like...
interesting.
It's like Taken.
Well, this is... Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's like Taken. I think
Oh,
it's
yeah.
nice, surprisingly bloody, surprisingly coarse, and... I mean, it does that thing where there's a kid in it, and the moment the kid turns up, you go, but it doesn't ruin it, which is amazing, because most films, when a kid turns up, you know it's time to go. But no, I thoroughly recommend this. Now, we're going to go to a very different film, Arbitrage, starring Richard Gere. I haven't seen this one. Claire, you didn't get to see it.
No, I didn't
But
see this one.
Russ, you went along to see it. First of all, the Mallard got Arbitrage.
They did,
Brilliant.
which is I think another product of their kind of recent digital switchover, if you like. You know, they're getting these slightly smaller films. They can just send them over and kind of on it goes. So kind of what you have here is Richard Gere plays a man called Robert Miller. That's where that happened. And he plays a very rich American investment banker, I suppose, really. So it's a bit of a film for our times, I suppose you could say. And unfortunately, he's invested some money very poorly, and is on a very sharp downward spiral. And he's having to commit fraud in order to sell his company for millions of dollars so that he can get rid, and kind of take his family off and leave before he gets found out by, I assume, the IRS or someone else. He's having to plug a £400 million hole with some borrowed money in his bank account to shore up his finances. And then kind of if you throw in a mistress, and then if you also throw in Susan Sarandon as his wife, who kind of knows more than he thinks she does, and then a daughter who's kind of in charge of the company's finances, and you get kind of what turns out to be quite a kind of tense morality tale, really. So it's directed by a guy called Nicholas Jarecki. It's his first kind of full-length feature as a director. And to be honest with you, it's pretty well handled. I mean, it's not, in terms of direction, there's nothing particularly much to shout about. It's not showy. There's no, 10-minute tracking shots. There's nothing special. But it's nice, competently handled bit of direction, shot and story. It gets a bit interesting towards the end with its framing in terms of how it frames Richard Gere's character. I mean, it's quite a difficult one on the whole, because obviously in the world we live in, how are we going to feel sorry for someone who's done this? It's quite a difficult kind of thing to get your head around. I mean, I think it's great casting, and that it's Richard Gere. He's a very likable person in general, and I think he trades on all those kind of characters in the past that he's kind of done. And I think he does a very good job of outwardly showing that confidence he needs, but inwardly he's cracking kind of one day at a time as it gets worse and worse and worse, which is quite interesting. And so ultimately, I didn't know what arbitrage meant when I kind of went in to watch the film. Kind of did a bit of research afterwards, and it turns out it's kind of, in the financial kind of world, it's the process of kind of buying and selling at the same time to maximise profits. So you're kind of constantly treading water. So you're doing everything at once, making money, but then obviously there's inherent risk in that. And I think that kind of, it sums up kind of how the film works, in that here's a man who's trying to juggle both the work and a life balance with all the expectations that are on him as a family man, but also there's this kind of seedy underside that he's having to kind of bat away, and then there's obviously problems that come up just through the narrative itself that kind of works. And so in that sense, it was a really quite an interesting film to watch. It had more excitement than I thought it was, and it had a very, like I say, interesting and surprisingly open conclusion, which was quite nice to see, because it could have ended up, banker stuff him, we'll put him in jail. It could have ended up some other places, and it goes somewhere much more interesting than you might expect. So a really strong character piece. It almost reminded me kind of, without the real sly comedy, David Mamet kind of a film where the script's really nice and tight, obviously written by the guy who directed it, so he's got good control over that. And I know there was a bit of improvisation kind of with the actors as well, a bit of rehearsal, and so it does come across like that. And you almost imagine it would have been a very good play that they kind of transposed to the screen. So I'd recommend it. I don't necessarily need to see it in the cinema. But a really interesting film, and certainly one of Richard Gere's probably best of the last 10 years, to be honest with you. So, yeah, quite a strong one, solid effort.
Okay, fantastic. And sort of finally for cinema, Danny Boyle's Trance is coming to Mallard this Friday. I got a chance to see it on a recent visit to the UK. The basic story of Trance is that James McAvoy works at an auction house, and he's helped a gang of criminals led by Vincent Cassel, who's just just the best actor ever in my view. He helps them steal a work of art, and so it's all based around that very fascinating world of sort of lost masterpieces. And so, but the problem is he sustains an injury during the robbery, and he doesn't know where he's put the work of art. And so they go to a hypnotist, played by Rosario Dawson, who is to take him through several trances, try and get into his head to find out where this work of art is. And, of course...
There's more in there than meets the eye.
Intrigue and...
mystery.
Deception ensues. And what I really liked about Trance was it's Danny Boyle in that Train-Spotting Shallow Grave style of filmmaking that he does. This isn't the slow sort of lingering filmmaking of Sunshine, but this is that kind of, the music is almost constantly going in the background, and it's all up tempo. It's all kind of, it's all sort of left field type stuff. It's a very British feeling film. It's based in Britain, but it's got that very kind of sort of British energy that Danny Boyle's films have, and very sort of distinctly from this country, and not American and not Americanized either. Even though Rosario Dawson's in it, playing a very strong character, and that's the great thing about this film. Like Shallow Grave and Trainspotting, it's 4 or 5 very strong, very interesting characters who act not in that film sort of plot-driven way, but in a way where characters can surprise you very realistically. It's one of those films. Some of the trailers are a bit spoilery, and it is a very twisty film. I did watch
a trailer.
I think it's based on an old BBC film.
Okay.
But it's a great film to go into, and just you don't really know. What I've explained about it is essentially just the setup.
Yeah.
And where it goes from there was just very exciting in that way. You know, when you go and watch a film and you enjoy it, but sometimes you go and watch a film and you think, I've really got every penny worth out of that. Even if it's not the best film in the world, but I've really got every penny worth. The film works perfectly within what it sets out to do. And like I say, it's Danny Boyle. I mean, I like Slumdog Millionaire. It's quite good, but thankfully this is Danny Boyle having fun. And it does the same thing that Olympus Has Fallen does. In fact, what you've got is a very kind of quite a sleazy film in many ways, but because of the director, whereas Olympus Has Fallen has a very interesting brutal edge to it, running through the characters. This film has a very interesting kind of trick edge to it. It's got there's almost sort of a that kind of Orson Welles, Mr. Arcade and Citizen Kane kind of little. Kind of what is really going on here? It's got that interesting undercurrent. It's got the interest about the world of sort of lost art itself, which is fascinating. You get a little potted history at the start, and I think if you go to cinema, you will think I would have paid twice to watch that film.
Do you get a resolution at the end? Because things like Inception, you're left wondering. The massive debate.
Well, it's interesting.
Do you actually get a proper answer?
It's interesting that you should mention Inception, because avoiding giving you a proper answer to that, it does that brilliant thing that Inception does, which is to say, sorry, a bit of a divergence here, but Mark Cousins made that brilliant series about
Odyssey of film.
Yeah, the film and Odyssey, whatever it was called, about world cinema. And the thing he said at the start of every episode was, essentially, we built cameras, and what did we film? We filmed our dreams. And what this film does is, like Inception, it takes a concept that is perfect for film. It's perfect. It's a perfect hypnotism and trances, and the kind of the illusions and sort of deceptions that are going on are perfect for edited media. It's perfectly done. And Inception, when there's that great scene when it's at a cafe and he says, "How did we get here?" This is, and that's how we dream. That's how films are made. It's a form and theme and content all perfectly combined. I don't think it's a masterpiece. I just think it's real solid film, And you know what? It's about an hour and a half.
Oh,
Perfect.
finally.
So
Absolutely
he must have
perfect.
made this then, was it just after the
He made
Olympics?
it during.
During.
Oh,
He made it
good
during the
Lord.
opening ceremony. He filmed it, then did the opening ceremony, and then went back and edited it.
That's
which
incredible.
he said served him very well. Total clear head, and kind of went back and did it afterwards. Yeah.
Okay.
Really interesting way of making
And
it.
I think Danny Boyle, it's been said a lot this year, but I think he's one of the proper
British directors,
national
for sure.
treasures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
A real
definitely.
really someone to be proud of that they come from Britain and they export a very, even in Slumdog Millionaire, which is obviously based in India, they export a very British sensibility through the films. Anyway, Claire,
Oh, I'm gonna.
here comes the boom.
I'm gonna bring
where?
this down.
Where is it?
What is Here Comes the Boom? I've seen Kevin James on the front of it. Is it Kevin James?
It's
Kevin
Kevin
Queen's
James.
Kevin
Friggin'
James.
Yeah,
James.
and also think films like Hitch.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
and unfortunately, like as we were talking about with Tom Cruise, that we can't really put him in any genre because he does everything. With Kevin James, you know exactly what you're going to
exactly
get.
what you're getting. from
It's
Kevin
basically the same with every film, but different templates. I always go on about templates, but basically, this film is about a former college wrestler, Scott Voss. Kevin James, 42 years old, bored biology teacher, and his school's failing. So, with budget cutbacks, he decides to help the music department because the music teacher's about to lose his job. So he goes and says, okay, I'm going to get night schooling. I'm going to teach night school. And during his visit to one of his lessons, he meets this guy randomly who just so happens to be a trainer in, MMA, which is mixed martial arts.
Yeah, this is
So
good. This is good.
he walks into their flat and sees them watching it on their TV and goes, yeah, I'm going to do that. And so the next day he
Does he-
basically goes and does it.
Does he have a background in?
Wrestling at college.
Right.
Pretty
And
similar.
apparently wrestlers make really good
Yeah.
mixed martial arts. So this film, it just basically, it does what it says on the tin. He just goes off and ends up in big competitions. And I'm not going to give away the
No,
the
no,
ending.
please don't. Please
Because
don't.
no, it's a cliffhanger. So
Is this not Warrior?
it's basically.
Was that not half the story of Warrior? Was a teacher who went off to?
I
didn't see
I
Warrior.
didn't see Warrior, but
Tom Hardy won.
Tom, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
they were both fighters first off, weren't
Okay.
they?
He
was
But
a
one of them then stopped
Oh,
doing
right.
it, I think, and then he went back.
Right.
And that's
okay.
how they came together, I think. Yeah.
But yeah, it's this is a little bit of a more bizarre film because it's got Henry Winkler in it, who ends up
Hey.
having the reason why Kevin James's character helps him is because he's got his wife pregnant and he's like going on 70 and he's having a baby, and so it's just really random plot points of why he's doing this, and you kind of think, okay, it was well received by the UFC. There's
Oh, good.
there's a lot of people in it who are in UFC,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they were just really happy to get their sport
sure.
out there.
Yeah.
But all the critics and everything on Rotten Tomatoes and all this stuff just gave it. It's appalling because it is weak. It's weak in its plot. You could put any sport in there.
Yeah.
You could have put table tennis in there. You could have
Yeah,
put tiddlywinks in there. It didn't really matter. But I think UFC were really happy to have their sport
Was it
out
just an
in
excuse
Hollywood.
for Kevin James to not have to pay to go to the gym?
He's a massive fan of this sport, which is why he's produced it and made
Sure.
it. But he did look he was getting quite buff at the end.
Oh, if you
So,
paid me to go to the gym, I'd be
So
I'd be
basically,
good.
people look at the Hollywood and go, "Wow, these people look amazing." Their job is to look amazing. They're
Yeah,
going to spend
exactly.
10 hours a day, as we do, sat down
Yeah.
at our desks, working out in the gym. And it's like, if you've got that time to spend, then you're gonna look good. And by the end of this film, he was looking very different to how he did in Hitch. So his arms were pumped. I think there's some bit of CGI in there somewhere, but
So was it awesome? Was it amazing?
I thought it was Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
Sunday afternoon film if there's nothing on. It's quite weird because we've just recently seen Rust and Bone.
Mm-hmm.
So this is also kind of
very
like
different.
this is the other side of it.
Yeah.
This is a completely flip
Wow.
of the coin. But yeah, just go if you're into it, watch it because there's so many characters in there who are playing people who are playing themselves.
Oh, right.
And they're in the background, and there's an actual real fighter. I can't remember his name. My friend who I work with is really into this UFC stuff, and he told me all the characters, and I blatantly can't remember any of their names because my brain won't let me
I
retain
remember
that information.
ages ago, me and some friends paid for one of those, pay-per-view UFC things.
Yeah.
And it was the least interesting. It was two men
Grappling.
essentially
Rolling.
choking each other.
Chokeholds. Tapping out.
It was mildly erotic, I'll give it that. But is the fighting good in this? Is it
Well, it
quite
does
good-
say that. I mean, all the kids from the school are watching the big fight at the end, and it just kind of says violence does save music
Well,
departments.
fair
that
enough.
was
so
kind of.
that's
I
the
wasn't
message.
sure about the message. Yeah, that was
Violence
my
solves
problem with it.
everything and saves music departments.
Yeah,
So
Oh, like Olympus Has Fallen. Then.
for sure.
That's good.
Exactly.
Okay, so final film today is Seven Psychopaths. This is from the maker of the amazing In Bruges. It's about a guy writing a screenplay called Seven Psychopaths and the people he meets along the way. It stars Colin Farrell, seemingly being good Colin Farrell and not terrible Colin Farrell, but that always depends on the writing, and the brilliant Sam Rockwell and Christopher Walken. So what do you guys make of this film?
I've yet to watch this film. I put my.
The people who are listening to this can't see my face, could they? They can't see my
No.
face.
There's no
That's a
webcam
shame.
here.
I didn't like it. I was so angry with myself for not liking it, and then I became angry at them because I didn't like it. I love In Bruges. Yeah? In Bruges is epic and it's great.
It's a brilliant
But you know what else it is? Is that underneath all the darkness and the horribleness, it's actually lovely.
Yeah.
And that's why it's brilliant. This one left me absolutely stone cold. Nothing at all for anybody. I didn't even really laugh, which surprised me. There were some funny bits in the second half that made me kind of lightly chuckle, but that was it. And I was so surprised because this is like a really dark, violent, meta kind of a film, and I love that kind of stuff normally. It's really interesting. I like kind of that knowing, glance that you get in the wink and the nudge and all that kind of stuff that you get from it. But there was no one to root for, no one really in there that I really cared a single jot about, and it's mental. I hated it. Christopher Walken was really good, but only because he was going batshit mental for the whole 90 minutes or however long it is.
That's what you want from Christopher.
Yeah, and that's
I
what
think
you
there's
want. Like full on crazy
Yeah.
is his. That's
I think
brilliant.
possibly my favourite bit of the film. I think I probably enjoyed it a bit more than
Yeah,
you did.
maybe.
By the sound of things.
It's not. I didn't hate it. That's the thing. It was
But
just,
the problem is, you're thinking, well, it's not In Bruges, is it? I mean, I know not many films are, but it was just so unfocused.
Yeah, it was all.
And
yeah.
I think the highlight of the film was a guy basically says to Chris Walken, "Put your hands up," and he goes, "No."
yeah.
And the look of puzzlement on the guy's face,
Yeah.
"Well, I've got a gun, so what? I don't want to."
I don't know. You can't make me. Yeah, shoot me. Who cares?
But then the whole film's kind of a bit like that, and it kind of rambles along, and there's kind of
there's
Tom Waits turns up.
Yeah,
and,
little vignettes and little
like Woody
stories
Harrelson's in
and
there, but none of them are quite. It's
Harry
not
Dean
quite.
Stanton turns up.
But it doesn't quite connect in the way that In Bruges, because In Bruges is quite a focused film as well. It's got sort of a story,
Yeah.
whereas this doesn't.
Like I wasn't sure whether the story was supposed to be Colin Farrell writing the script, or Sam Rockwell nicking dogs, or people coming to talk to him about being psychopaths. It's so much going on. And like I remember seeing the trailer for this and thinking, "Wow, that's going to be great and really funny." And I know a few people who had seen it and were like, "Oh, it's really quite good." And so I was, and I just didn't get it, and I just it left me cold. That was it, And so didn't care for anyone. Wasn't that funny, and therefore, what's driving you along? Apart from a couple of nice little short 5-minute bursts that were quite good. So it's a shame. I wouldn't tell people not to watch it, but I wouldn't either say, yeah, it's brilliant. It was so utterly middling that we always say it a lot. I wish I'd watched In Bruges again because it's funny and,
I
and
didn't
great.
really like In Bruges. It left me feeling like how you said cold.
Yeah.
I didn't really get into it. Maybe I need to have a second watch, but I just didn't. I think when I started watching it, I've heard all the hype from everyone saying how great it was.
Yeah.
So I think when I sat down and watched it, I just thought, I'm not feeling it. But
Wow, on that controversial
Yeah,
note.
it's tough.
sorry,
Yeah.
controversial.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the podcast. Unfortunately, we didn't get time to get into the epic that is The Master. We'll cover that next time, of course. Next time round, we'll also do Iron Man 3, which is 3D.
3D for sure.
Nemo's coming to the Mallard
Is it?
in 3D, which
Okay.
I might be quite tempted to check that out, actually.
Yeah.
Take the kids.
And there was one more film. What's the other film coming up for the Mallard?
Frank and Robot?
No.
No.
Oh, Frank
There's
and
another
Robot.
The other
That sounds
one-
brilliant. Frank and
Frank and
Robot.
Robot and Frank, isn't it? But there was another one. This is brilliant podcasting.
We're professionals to the end here.
It is terrible. Quick skirt onto Google.
That would
I don't know, not that one. Man of Steel.
Trance is out.
Place Beyond the Pines.
That's it.
And I don't know if anyone's going to bother going to watch 21 and Over.
No, I'm not
Hangover,
gonna see
but
that.
with children. Anyway, thank you for listening. I was Winter Tyson. With me were Russell Kellaway,
See you later.
Claire Muckett, and that's the
Hello.
alarm. Good night.